The U.S. Justice Department is facing growing criticism for sharing only a fraction of its files related to Jeffrey Epstein before the deadline that was set by Congress, that was Friday, and for the fact that most of those files were heavily redacted.
There are several ways to get at this. Some take longer, some are shorter. The quickest way, and I think most expeditious way to get justice for these victims is to bring inherent contempt against Pam Bondi. And
so that is criticism from Republican Representative Thomas Massie, who went as far to say, as U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi is breaking the law over the partial release. So for more on what is happening, we are joined this morning by Louis Krashinsky, postdoctoral fellow at the University of Toronto's Department of Political Science. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Anne-Marie. Thanks for having me.
So on Friday, here on Your Morning, we were discussing the possibility that the files would be redacted. And some of the files the Justice Department, in fact, shared were completely blacked out. Then on the weekend, the DOJ also deleted 13 photos from its website, including a photo that featured U.S. President Donald Trump. That was also removed from the website. So what stands out to you on the Epstein files that was not released?
Yeah, well, I think, the Justice Department is claiming that there's been heavy redactions to protect the identity of victims, right? But there's just been so many things that are missing here that it hasn't really given any sort of sense of transparency to people who have spent months and months following this story, who are just waiting to uncover just a little bit more of what's actually been happening, what's been going on. And I think this there's been so much momentum built up to, say, okay, they're finally releasing the files. Maybe there'll be a little bit more satisfaction for people trying to get to the bottom of this, but it hasn't happened. And, they've delayed, they haven't released everything, and the things that have been released have been heavily redacted. So I think they're still a far way off from providing any sense of justice to people who've been following the story and to the many victims of Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, part of what you say we know is true, either through court documents or books that have been written about stories surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. But when it comes to these files, was there anything new to be learned?
Not much. And I think that's kind of the main problem. You saw a few more photos of people who maybe hadn't been as prominently featured in knowing to be associated, like Michael Jackson, Chris Tucker, Mick Jagger. There was a lot of Bill Clinton content released, and that, of course, does feel at least partially motivated by partisanship. And these, at least in Bill Clinton's case, there hasn't been all that much surprise, I would say. I think people knew that there were ties between Clinton and Epstein, and this wasn't a sitting political leader like Donald Trump is. And it just sort of seems that there's still a lot further to go. That there weren't all of these revelations coming to light about new people that people do suspect of being involved in this in various ways.
Maybe just further evidence to the stories that had already been placed out there, either by former victims or that came through court. As of this morning, and I just checked just before our interview, President Trump has not commented on the Epstein files release. He didn't mention files at a rally that happened in North Carolina on Friday, although he talked a lot about them in the election leading up to, or the election campaign leading up to his election. What do you make of the non-reaction so far? And what do the Republicans and his supporters make of it?
Yeah, well, so it puts them in a little bit of an uncomfortable position, right? Because one of the core tenets of, you could call it MAGA ideology, is a distrust of the government, right? It's, there's deep state cover-ups of everything that you could suspect that exist, right? And Donald Trump, your president, was supposed to be the person that would take this on, that this would be one of the fights he would champion. And now here he is personally caught up in one of the most explosive scandals that the country has dealt with in many years, and hasn't been completely transparent or forthright about, what his involvement has been, nor has he really led the charge to really get justice for everybody in this regard. And there's a lot of signs that maybe he is hiding things, and maybe he is sort of protecting himself. He's got certainly a loyal Justice Department that would have every reason to be, to be protective of him. So, I'm not surprised about his muted reaction. I think you can sort of see that there's maybe a communication strategy here of them wanting this story to die. But the fear is that, this story really has legs. It's been months and months and kind of the slow drip of information, I think, makes it all the worse. And you're seeing people in his own party, in the Republican Party, who have come out and said that, more needs to be done on this. And you've seen them publicly break with Trump, like Thomas Massie, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nancy Mace, and others.
Yeah, really quickly, Louis, there are more documents to be released. They said they did it in parts and in parcels because it was just too much, and they were trying to protect victims. So you're right, this story is not going to die down because we're going to have more and more releases. When's the next batch due to be made public?
You know what? I think it's a little bit unclear. Now, people are unhappy that it hasn't happened now. They're already in violation of what the letter of the law said, which it had to be in 30 days. Mm-hmm. So, it really could be any day. And it's curious whether it's going to be more heavily redacted. You could see them kind of push it on slower news days in some ways if there's any sort of strategy there. But it's unclear when we're going to get more information and whether that information is going to be completely satisfying to the people interested in this story. And the longer this goes, the closer we get to the November midterms in 2026. And, Donald Trump gets closer and closer to being, in a lame duck status. And so we might see more people in his party be willing to publicly break with him and use this story as, maybe a justification of, fears about his low polling numbers or, how much he can really help them in the future if there are risks to their party.
That reasoning also helps to explain the narrative. A lot of talk around peace and peace building in Venezuela. Louis Krashinsky, I want to thank you for joining us here in Your Morning.
Thank you for having me. It's great.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.